It's the Opperman Report. Join digital forensic investigator and PI Ed Opperman for an in-depth discussion of conspiracy theories, strategy of New World Order resistance, high-profile court cases in the news, and interviews with expert guests and authors on these topics and more. It's the Opperman Report. And now, here is investigator Ed Opperman.
Okay, welcome to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. I'm the president of Opperman Investigations and Digital Forensic Consulting. You can find my work at emailrevealer.com. Get a copy of my autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator, at emailrevealer.com. Also different kinds of asset searches, locates, background reports, adaption investigations, emailrevealer.com. Hey, this show is brought to you by getthetea.com. Life Change Tea, and I can't recommend this to you enough. I'm still losing weight. I'm not working out as much as I was last week. I'm a little bit down. The past couple of days I've been feeling a little bit tired. I don't want to push myself. It's been real hot here in Vegas, but as soon as they open up that pool again, I'm going to get back in that pool. Down, let's see, so to 211, about 21 pounds, 22 pounds in 8 weeks. GetTheTea.com, Life Change Tea. I can't recommend it enough to you. Okay, really excited about today's show. We got James DiEugenio, well-known and respected JFK researcher. He's the author of JFK Assassination, just came out May 1st. He's an expert on the Bobby Kennedy assassination, Martin Luther King assassination, and even Malcolm X. His website is kennedysandking.com. Mr. DiEugenio, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate this. Tell the audience about yourself. Who is James DiEugenio?
Well, okay, I'm by trade a writer and an educator. All right, and for about I'm a retired educator. All right, and for about the last 25 or so years, I've been very much involved with these major assassinations of the 1960s, since I believe they had a tremendous impact on America, the America that we live in today. All right, and so me and a few of my friends and colleagues decided to put out a publication, which over time transferred itself into this website you just mentioned, kennedysandking.com, in which we post book reviews, film reviews, and original essays on these major assassinations of the 1960s. And we're right now, at this particular point in time, May the 9th, we're caught between the anniversary of two of the major ones, the 50th anniversary of both the Martin Luther King assassination, which of course occurred in Memphis in April of 1968, and the Robert Kennedy assassination, which of course occurred in Los Angeles in June of 1968. And both those particular cases are getting a lot of press right now. Later on this year, of course, you'll have the 55th anniversary of the JFK assassination. So there's really, in essence, you have three major anniversaries in this 1 year. Okay? So that's what I'm doing right now.
Give me an idea. How old were you when all these assassinations started taking place?
Well, I was back when the JFK assassination hit. I was in the 6th grade back in my hometown of Erie, Pennsylvania. So then, of course, you just add 5 years to that, and I was in high school with the Bobby Kennedy assassination and the Martin Luther King assassination. And I have to, like most people, I'd say the vast majority of people, I didn't really suspect that anything was happening or was going on subterraneanly that the public didn't know about. Today, of course, I look back at how stupid I was. Okay, but I really didn't have any kind of curiosity about this thing. And it evolved slowly over time. All right, and at the time of the Jim Garrison investigation, for example, I took note of it and I kind of discarded it like most of us did, because he got so much bad press. But then a few years later, I stumbled upon his Playboy interview in the mid-'70s, and that really provoked me. And I started reading a few books on the case. All right. And then I began to believe that, hey, there was really something wrong with this JFK case, And it wasn't until a little bit later that I realized, hey, it's not just the JFK case. It's these other two cases, rather actually three, all right, that there's something major wrong with all of them, And so that's when I discovered that, that's when I began to really write and do a lot of research and go to conferences and interact with other people. So, I believe, for example, that the media in this country, the major media, or what was come to be called the mainstream media, or MSM, has been very, very bad, and I don't believe it's by accident, on these assassinations of the 60s. And so we have to rely upon alternative sources of media, for example, yourself, all right, to try and get the truth out to the public about what really happened to this country as a result of those things. So that's how I got interested in it, and that's how I, arrived at where I am today. Our website, kennedysandking.com, gets about 3.5 million hits a year, all right? And, considering that it's a niche website and we don't publicize it very much, it's not bad.
Yeah, I'll send you a clip of the show. Put a clip of this show up on there. We'd love to get those hits. That's great. Okay, so I guess in the mid-'70s, when everybody was starting to catch on, is when you started catching on that there was something fishy going on here.
The mid-'70s, I'm glad you brought that up, because in the mid-'70s, of course, what happened, there's three things that happened. There's, first of all, you had the Church Committee, in which they began to expose the crimes of the CIA and the FBI, including both the JFK case and the Martin Luther King case, J. Edgar Hoover's war against Martin Luther King, for example. All right. Then you had the first public showing of the Zapruder film, which was on ABC, I believe, in the summer of 1975. All right. And then you had the reopening of the Kennedy and the King cases with the House Select Committee on Assassinations. So, yeah, that was a very turbulent time from about 1975 to about 1979.
Yeah, and we had all that under Jimmy Carter. And I guess we
right.
had that because of all the scandals of Watergate and Nixon. And, maybe there's hope after Trump, that we'll have another swing of the pendulum, and get some free these congressional hearings. A lot of people think the Church Committee and stuff like that, they were like show trials. What's your opinion on that?
On which one, the Trump case?
No. The assassination, the House assassinations, and the Church Committee.
Okay.
Yeah.
I actually wrote a lot about the House Select Committee on Assassinations.
Right.
At the beginning, when they had Richard Sprague leading as the chief counsel, I think that promised to be a very good and serious look at two very serious subjects, namely the assassinations of both King and John F. Kennedy. What happened is that the media didn't like Sprague very much. They didn't like his approach because it was going to be a very serious, in other words, he was going to investigate those two cases as if they were murder cases. Like he had been the assistant DA in Philadelphia for a long period of time. He'd won something like 77 cases and lost one or two. All right. And he was going to go after these cases like they were homicide cases. A real, which is not the way the Warren Commission approached it at all. All right. Okay. So, and they didn't like that because he was going to obviously, uncover a lot of things that they had never covered. So they began to go after him very bitterly and resentfully, specifically the New York Times, to a lesser degree the Washington Post and the LA Times. And it was made clear to him by Congress that if he stuck it out, they weren't going to fund the committee. And so he had to resign. And see, whenever you do something like that, it sends a message to anybody else who follows. Okay? All right. And so what happened is that they found another chief counsel, and the House Select Committee after that, I don't, first of all, it was a very rushed investigation. All right. Second of all, they had all kinds of trouble with the CIA and the FBI, which is why they ended up classifying so much stuff. All right. And so what happened is that towards the end, in their rush to go ahead and finish the report and get it out there, I think that there were a lot of corners that were cut. All right. And we're finding out today, of course, because of the declassification process, we're finding out just how many of the corners were cut. All right. You take a look at the House Select Committee, what happened to that committee, and you really wonder, can this country actually, as a structure, can it really face what happened? You really have to wonder. You just wonder after examining it. I've come to the conclusion that the institutions of government and the media simply cannot face the truth about these cases. I don't like saying that, but that's a conclusion I've been forced to come to.
Well, since we have the King anniversary coming up, why don't we touch on that?
That was last month.
Oh, really? I thought it was April. Oh my God!
April.
My God, you're right. We're in May. Oh my God! Oh my God!
I think you've been doing too many shows.
No, I got a very busy life. You're right. Oh my God! Okay, the whole summer's here already. Okay, that's why it's 100 degrees outside. Okay, why don't we start off with this? Why don't you give us the official version of what happened with the Martin Luther King assassination, and then we'll get into all the flaws in it.
All right. Okay. The official version is that James Earl Ray shot King from across the street at a place called Bessie's Boarding House, above a place called Jim's Grill. He got off one shot, was a direct hit through his cheek. All right, and that killed King. All right. And then what happened is that Ray managed to escape. He went through both the southern and the northern areas of the United States, went to Canada, all right, and then left from Canada to England. He visited Portugal, Lisbon, all right, and then he was finally caught at Heathrow Airport. All right, approximately 2 months after the King assassination. All right, and then the official story has him being extradited back to Tennessee, and he pled guilty to a life sentence. Now that's the official story.
What caused Ray? Okay, what caused Ray to become a suspect?
Can you say that again, please?
What caused James Earl Ray to become the suspect?
Oh, okay, because this is kind of weird, because just saying this makes me chuckle.
Yeah.
The official story says that as Ray was running down the stairs after the assassination, he dropped a piece of, like a duffel bag, all right, in the foyer of a novelty store, okay, at the base of the stairs. And this included several of the items that were in his possession, including the rifle that he used to kill King. All right. All right. And so then that's how, they traced it, okay? And because he had purchased a rifle about, I think, a day or two before. All right. And so that's what was now, your listeners might think, and actually the late Mark Lane actually said this, if James Earl Ray did that, he should be found not guilty by reason of insanity.
Mm-hmm.
All right, and later turned out, and this is one of the big chinks in the armor of the official story, that the guy who ran the novelty store on the first floor, a guy named Guy Canipe, he said that duffel bag was dropped 10 minutes before King was killed. All right? So that's the excuse for pursuing Ray and making him a suspect. All right? Now, that's the official story. Okay, that's the official story. That's the one that the state came to, the conclusion that the state came to. There's, in addition to what I just said about dropping the duffel bag before the shot rang out, there's several other things that are wrong. Well, let's put it this way, that seem suspect about that story. For example, there's the problem of there was no real identification of Ray being in the place where the state said the fatal shot hit King from. That was supposed to be a communal bathroom at this Bessie's boarding house, all right? The state could not find a witness that put Ray in that bathroom at the proper time, so they enlisted a guy named Charlie Stevens, who was falling down drunk at the time, and they essentially bribed him with the promise of a reward, okay? And there were two witnesses that said that Charlie Stevens was dead drunk and couldn't identify anybody at the time of the King assassination. All right. There's also a major problem with the fact that if you take a look at the actual scene of where they say the shot came from, a French magazine about a year after the King assassination sent a reporter there to try and duplicate the position that you would have to be in to go ahead and take that shot. And they came to the conclusion that you'd have to be standing on the rim of one of those old-fashioned bathtubs. I don't know if you're old enough to remember those things.
I actually am, yeah. My grandmother had one, yeah.
Okay. And then you would have to bend over, okay, and then stick the rifle, on a windowsill. In other words, it'd be a very, very difficult shot to get off. All right? Okay? So that's another problem. All right? Now, the other problem is that there are several other witnesses who say that the shot really didn't come from there. It actually came from the bushes below King. All right? And so, and Earl Caldwell, a famous reporter for the New York Times, and he has a very good article, which we link to in the news section of kennedysandking.com, he has a very good, because he was in Memphis at that time, covering King for the New York Times, and, he came to the conclusion that the shot came from the bushes below King. Now, you want to hear something really weird? The next morning, the city sent out a crew to go ahead and chop down those bushes.
Wow.
Okay. Now, isn't that kind of weird? The day after King is killed, and you have nothing better to do than send your landscaping crew out to, in a city the size of Memphis. Okay. All right. And so, but that's what really happened. It was really chopped down, to eliminate the shrubbery there.
In the middle of an active crime scene.
Right. All right, now there's some other things that there's never been any proof that Ray knew that King was going to be in that room. Okay? There's never been any proof of that. So how did he know? That's a very interesting question, you know? There's also the fact that what was King doing there? Well, King had been there about a week and a half prior, involved in a sanitation workers dispute. All right? And it turns out that sanitation workers demonstration ended up going a little bit haywire because of a group of guys called the Invaders. All right? And this was like a imitation Black Panthers group that caused a provocation, and there were windows broken and some looting that took place. All right? And they had to get King out of there so he wouldn't get hurt. So he didn't feel very good about that, so he decided to come back to Memphis a few days later to make amends. Now, two very interesting things happen in the interim. Number one, the FBI starts putting out stories that King is staying at a white-owned hotel. All right? And so King decides to switch his hotel to a hotel owned by an African American called the Lorraine. All right? So number one, he gets moved into this different hotel. Number two, the detail of black policemen who had been his regular protection were not allowed to guard him on this trip for whatever reason. All right? And then number three, someone, and to this day nobody knows who it was, somebody switched his original room at the Lorraine, okay, which was going to be originally facing inside the hotel a courtyard view, and they switched it to a second floor balcony. Now, I don't have to tell you why that's so important, right? Because he wouldn't have been on that second story balcony. He couldn't have been shot like that. You know? So those are all, and I forgot probably the most important thing. The guy who was the leader of this, the Invaders, all right, there's a famous photograph of King dying on the balcony of the Lorraine Motel. And the leader of that group, a guy named Merrill McCullough, has pointed over to where he thinks the shot came from. It later turned out that Merrill McCullough was an undercover police agent for the local Memphis police. He then went on to join the CIA.
Wow.
All right? Now, you being a private investigator, I don't have to tell you how important something like that is, you know? All right?
Yeah,
so,
if the witness is working undercover for the cops, that could be a problem. This might be a good time to take a little commercial break, though. We're with James DiEugenio, and we're going to be talking about his book, JFK Assassination. And what's the tag after that, JFK Assassination?
The Evidence Today.
The Evidence Today. We'll be getting to that, too, after these breaks. And now a word from our sponsors.
WPR Rebuttal, covering the sides of the story missed by Wisconsin Public Radio, bringing narratives the UW System Board of Regents won't allow, shedding the light on perspectives the owners of WPR don't want you to hear. Every Thursday at 12:30 Central Time, WPR Rebuttal is your destination for grassroots journalism in Sauk County and beyond. Our host, Senator JPO, provides insightful analysis into stories that are only superficially covered by mainstream press. A recent inventory of topics includes college graduate underemployment, yellow journalism in the media, and favoritism in the public sector hiring process. Get your WPR rebuttal fix Thursdays at 12:30 Central Time.
The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company located in India. So you know you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service to boot. They offer all kinds of services, business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshore research networking, customer care, press release content writing and distribution, and much, much more. They offer website development, e-commerce solutions, mobile responsive designs. Now, I've personally worked with Subhash for over 10 years. This is the man that puts out my press releases. They've done work on my websites, so I can personally recommend SubhashTechnosis.com. You can find a link to Subash Technosis at OppermanReport.com and also AwakeRadio.us.
People are waking up. They're standing up to those pushing pesticides and GMOs as safe alternatives for a starving world. What a bunch of crap! I tell you, I'd rather eat dirt. So I drink Life Change Tea. It's an herbal drink, cleansing my body of toxic sludge and nasty chemicals, and of course, ridding the intruders that are hidden in my so-called food. And by the way, Life Change Tea is non-GMO and organic. No fillers, no yuck. Just a great defense against you-know-what. May the supplement force awaken you. Don't fall to the dark side. Sorry. I went to the movies last night. Anyway, enough said. How do you get that herbal drink and change your life? GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. You will awaken. You will get stronger, and you might even lose a bit of weight. So awaken to Life Change Tea and the many one-of-a-kind supplements at GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. May the supplement force be with you.
We all have questions. Did he do it or did he not? We all have opinions, but do we really know the truth? New evidence will now be presented and the ultimate answers will be revealed in the explosive documentary, Serpents Rising. Inspired by the bestseller Double Cross for Blood, an independent investigation of the trial of the century, the lies, the myths, and the concealed evidence. Don't miss Serpents Rising.
This excellent documentary film is available at Serpents Rising at Vimeo Videos on demand. Watch it for $1.99. You can have your ad played here at OppermanReport.com every Friday night, 5 p.m., and Saturday night, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And on Friday nights, too, we do a live portion for 1 hour that I just do a live monologue. The ads are very, very inexpensive, and they're also played in the Opperman Report member section. In the member section, you can find all kinds of exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. It's as cheap as $6 a month, $20 a quarter, or $75 for a year. If you contact me directly at oppermanreport@gmail.com, I'll set you up with a little special deal there where you get a discount if you PayPal me directly, and you even get a copy of my book. I want to thank William Ramsey, who helps us produce the show and book guests. You can find William Ramsey, who's an excellent author, at William Ramsey Investigates on YouTube. Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. We're here with James DiEugenio. KennedysandKing.com is his website. The new book is called The JFK Assassinations, The Evidence Today, and it's co-written by Oliver Stone?
No, he actually wrote the foreword.
Forward, okay.
But it was actually his idea to come out with the book at this time. He really loves this book, all right? It's one of his 3 favorite books on the JFK case. The other 2 being JFK and the Unspeakable by Jim Douglas, and the second edition of Destiny Betrayed, which I published, I think, in 2012. But he really, really likes this book. All right.
Okay, excellent. And I hope we can get you back a couple of times to really flesh out these stories. But just imagine James Earl Ray, he checks into this flop house, and he doesn't know when King's going to be walking down that balcony. He has no idea. Okay, within hours, maybe an hour window. He's got to wait in this public bathroom up on top of a stilt there, up on top of this tub. A flop house, they're all in there, they're all drinking. All these guys drink. They got to use the bathroom every half hour, right? So, you know what I mean? It's just unbelievable.
Yeah. Right. So you don't know who's waiting outside that door.
Right.
You know, and you're supposed to be running outside the door with a rifle in your hand.
It's crazy.
You know, I mean, it's a very silly story,
Yeah.
if you ask me. Yeah.
Do you think sometimes they just want to push it in your face and just tell you, hey, look what we did?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't quite go that far.
Yeah.
But but let's put it this way. You know, anybody who studies these cases understands after a relatively short period of time that the official story in all of them is simply not very credible.
Yeah.
You know, and to continue with, if you want to take a few more minutes on the
Yes,
on
please.
the King case.
Please, yeah.
All right. See, we're also supposed to believe that James O'Reilly, when he escaped to Canada, went to the city of Toronto, and he somehow managed to get 4 false identities. And the 4 false identities all belonged to 4 men who bared a superficial resemblance to him. That is, hair, skin tone, eye color. And they all lived within a 5-mile radius of each other in the city of Toronto, a city that Ray had never been in before. Now, how do you do something like that?
Yeah, that would be state level, yeah.
It's mind-boggling, isn't it?
Yeah, that would be state. I think even back in those days, a driver's license database didn't have your picture on it, so it would be. It would really be.
It's really hard to believe how an average, ordinary person could pull something like that off. You know, all right, and nobody has ever been able to explain how the heck he did that. All right, so he stays in this rented room up in Toronto, a city never been before. One day, an unidentified man comes to his door, gives him a thick envelope, and within 24 hours, he's checked out of the room, and he buys a ticket to London. All right? He flies to London, all right, takes a couple of visits across the pond, I think 2 of them, to Lisbon, Portugal. All right. And by this time, the FBI has finally tracked down, you know, one of the aliases that he's using, and he gets caught at Heathrow Airport. All right. Then he gets extradited back to Memphis, and his original attorneys was a father-son team. I think they were Arthur and James Haynes. And they were both very interested in mounting a vigorous defense because they had found out about this guy, Gus Canipe, who had seen the duffel bag dropped in the foyer of his store before the shot rang out, which would have been a very good witness, of course, for James O'Reilly. And so they were going to go ahead and defend him at a full trial. They had even refused a plea bargain. All right? I'm sure you understand what a plea...
Sure.
Listeners understand what that means, right? Okay. They refused a plea bargain. The state was going to settle for 13 years. You know, back in those days, if you got 13 years, that meant you spent about half the time. All right? So Ray would have been out in about 6.5 years. All right, well, they refused that, and James O'Reilly refused that. Then, what Ray says, he then made the worst mistake he ever made in his life. All right? He said he made the worst mistake he ever made in his life. He had a dispute with his attorney. All right? He wanted to take the stand. His attorney did not want him to take the stand. And by the way, that's a very common, if you've ever been in the legal system, most of the time, defense attorneys don't want their client to take the stand, only if you have to. If there's no other way to mount your case. Because, you know, one mistake, and prosecuting attorneys, they're experts at asking you trick questions. All right, you flub up once, and you're convicted. All right, so they didn't want him to take the stand. They didn't think they needed him. So this highfalutin lawyer from Texas, one of the most famous lawyers of his time, Percy Foreman, somehow gets involved in the King case. He says that it was really Ray who wrote him a letter, but he was never able to, in his entire life, produce the letter. And Ray says, I never wrote Percy Foreman a letter. All right? He wanted to get involved with the case. He told him that he could get a very good verdict for him, that he would fight the case, etc., and that he'd go through all the materials. And well, to make a long story short, he didn't do any of that stuff. And once he got James Earl Ray to sign on the dotted line, all right, what happened was that he commenced to sell out his client. All right? And he was getting paid by this famous writer, William Bradford Huey, who had also already written a couple of articles on the case and for Look magazine, and was preparing a book on the case. All right? And so he was going to make something like about $100,000, which back then, you understand, is more like about $800,000 today, and for doing very little or nothing. And that's what he did. And he, at the end, when Ray did not want to settle, did not want to, have a plea, all right, Foreman essentially threatened both him and his brothers, okay, into going ahead and taking the settlement, which amounted to a guilty plea, a recitation of the charges and so-called evidence, all right, and in return for avoiding the electric chair, all right. Well, that's what happened. There was no defense. There was no trial, all right. And so within 3 days of that recitation in court, James Earl Ray wrote a letter to the judge, a guy named Preston Battle, saying, I did not cop to that plea willingly. I would like you to reconsider my case. And if you can believe this, but it really happened, as Preston Battle had his letter on his desk with a pen in his hand, he had a heart attack.
Oh, my God.
And he died. And he died, literally with his head on the letter. So by Tennessee law, at that period of time, we're talking 1968, if that happened, then the defendant was supposed to be automatically granted a new trial. But that didn't happen in this case. The law was not executed. All right? And so he didn't get a new trial. All right? And so this ended up being one of the very many pieces of bad fortune that James Earl Ray had. All right? Now, later on, many years later, we flash forward to the 90s, of course, and then there was this famous, actually find it kind of well done. Most of these televised mock trials I don't like, but the one in the James Earl Ray case, they actually spent a lot of money on that, and they actually did a good job on it. All right? And his attorney, William Pepper, got him acquitted there. Then they filed a civil suit. All right? The King family filed a civil suit, and the jury came back with a verdict that it was that Ray didn't do it, that it was really a conspiracy. All right? And so that's probably what would have happened if James Earl Ray would have actually been granted a real trial in the first place. All right?
The thing is
so that's a brief summary of the King, which was supposed to be last month. Of course, next month is the Robert Kennedy assassination, and you'll probably want me back for that one.
All right, I absolutely do, yeah.
I guess we can talk a little bit about my book, the JFK assassination, the evidence today. Right now, This book was written as a response to Vincent Bugliosi, the late Vincent Bugliosi. He died about a year ago. Who decided that the celebrity attorney who wrote a whole bunch of books, about 10, I think, if I remember correctly, and he decided to write a book about the John F. Kennedy case, which was called Reclaiming History. And that book, if you can believe it, but it's true, if you add up the whole thing, that is between the text and the CD that comes with the book, it comes to 2,646 pages. Now, and that's not the worst of it. The worst of it, it's an oversized book. All right, it's not a standard-sized book. It's an oversized book. All right. Now, I was probably one of the very few people in the whole country who actually read the whole book. Because the only way you can read that book is you have to be sitting at a desk, with the book off to your left, reading it. Then you put the CD in your computer, and there's 2 files on the CD. All right? The 2 files on the CD, there's one that's the actual references, that is his source notes to where he got information in the text, and the other part is additions to the text. In other words, there's more material. So that's how you come up with the 2,646 pages. And I was probably one of the, I'd probably say there were maybe less than 10 people in the whole country who read the whole entire book. But that's the way and I was very surprised at just how poor the book really was, and how mendacious it was. And what I mean by that, in the beginning of the book, Bugliosi writes that he is going to present the arguments of the critics of the Warren Report as they would want to have them presented, not as he would, before he invalidated them. I was very surprised he wrote that, because there's one thing I know about this case, is that if you present both sides equally or fairly, the Warren Commission side is not going to win. You just can't do that. All right, and being a prosecuting attorney like he was, he would never do something like that. So I pointed out in this book, time after time after time, where he did not do what he said he was going to do. All right? Literally, I must have done it at the minimum in 25 instances throughout the book. For example, there's the matter of Jack Ruby's polygraph. Do you know anything about that?
Very little.
Okay. Jack Ruby, of course, is the guy who walked in on Sunday morning to the basement of the Dallas Police Headquarters and killed Oswald. All right? And he, of course, was immediately apprehended. And while he was awaiting trial, the Warren Commission interviewed him, and he said he would like to have a polygraph exam. All right? And so the FBI sent out a polygraph expert, and they went ahead and they did a long polygraph test. And the polygraph expert said that Jack Ruby passed the test, and he was not in any way involved with Oswald or the Kennedy assassination. And people on the other side have always used this, to go ahead and say, well, see, there's really nothing to this. Well, in 1978, the House Select Committee on Assassinations appointed a 5-man team in which they went through Jack Ruby's polygraph exam. They made approximately 14 different arguments of why that polygraph has no validity. The technician broke that many rules when he conducted the test. one of them is that you're only supposed to ask at the most 16 questions. At the very most, like 18. All right? Well, this one asked over 50. All right? And the point is that if you do that, then if the guy's lying, he gets used to lying, and the indications don't show up. And the physiological indications are breathing, pulse rate, and one other thing. It's called the GSR, galvanic skin response. And a lot of polygraph technicians think that this is the most important one because it does things like measure. It's so sensitive that it can measure if somebody's blushing or not. All right? This is what the guy did on that one. On the GSR, he set the power down to 25% of full volume at the beginning. You're supposed to then raise it as the test goes. He lowered it. All right? And they came to the conclusion that that whole GSR part of the test absolutely worthless. All right? But they did say that they found a terrible mistake in what this guy did because he misread his charts, and there was a point where they think Ruby was actually lying. And this guy's test managed to cover it up. All right? So, now, when you look at Bugliosi's book, it's very obvious he read that, but he only points out 2 criticisms. And he leaves out the whole thing about the galvanic skin response. All right? So this is what I mean. This is what he did. This is, to me, we've had enough of these kind of books and enough of these commentators who all they want to do is dilly-dally around with the facts of the Kennedy case. We don't need that kind of stuff anymore. So that's one of the reasons that I wrote the book. Then the latter part of the book is about Tom Hanks and to a lesser extent Steven Spielberg, because Hanks bought the rights to Bugliosi's book, and he came out with this, I think, a pretty terrible picture called Parkland, which bombed. All right.
Yeah, that was horrible. Yeah, I didn't even know. I didn't even know that he was behind that.
Yeah, that was Tom Hanks.
Yeah.
All right. And so that movie was so bad that I decided to take a look at Tom Hanks in history. And a couple of other of his movies, for example, were Charlie Wilson's War, and this last movie he produced was The Post, which is supposed to be about the Pentagon Papers. All right? So the latter part of the book deals with that part. Tom Hanks, and I came to the conclusion Tom Hanks is one of the worst amateur historians, that is going around, and he has a tendency to make false narratives and then impose false heroes upon these stories, and it's one reason I believe, because I believe culture is very important to the way a country operates. If that's the kind of culture you have, that might explain to us why we're in such a mess today. Okay, and so that's what the third part of the book is about. All right.
Well, do you think that's by accident?
By the way, and I have to say, Amazon actually has the book dealing in the category of media studies. Because I guess they thought the third part of the book was the most important part of the book. All right, and so that's why they classified it in that area. All right, but you can go ahead and get it at Amazon or Barnes and Noble or at Skyhorse Publishing. All right, the JFK assassination, the evidence today.
Now, do you think that's by accident? If you have a guy like Hanks who's rewriting history and all these major, huge budget films and like over and over and over again.
I don't know what to make of that. I really don't, and I really think that it's because one of the things I pointed out in the book is that Hanks and Spielberg consider themselves history buffs. All right. Well, Tom Hanks never graduated from college. Spielberg never graduated from college, but he went back later when he was a very successful movie director, and he did finish his college credits. So they're not the kind of people who will do a lot of the hard work that you need to be doing, in order to produce a good historical film. And his track record so far of the 3 films I did deal with, those 3 films I just named, is very, very poor. We don't need to have any more false heroes, on the screen in this country. I mean, to make a movie about the Pentagon Papers and to deal with Daniel Ellsberg in about 15 minutes of a 2-hour movie, and to try and make heroes out of Kay Graham and Ben Bradley, I mean, please, give me a break. Daniel Ellsberg and his partner Tony Russo, who smuggled the Pentagon Papers out of the Rand Corporation, faced criminal charges. They could have gone to jail for 145 years. All right? Those are the real heroes of the Pentagon Papers case. So that's why I have a big problem with Tom Hanks.
It also shocked me too. At the end of the movie, they didn't even mention that it was E. Howard Hunt, and went in and broke into his psychiatrist's office. You'd think this would be significant,
They never mentioned that part of the story.
Like not even in the little line at the end, with the little descriptions that they had at the end there. There's nothing.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, we're pretty much out of time. You got another book coming up too about RFK.
That's not actually me. That's a friend of mine. Lisa Pease. I wrote the introduction for that. That's coming out a few months down the line, and I can, if you want to interview her, I can arrange to do that for you.
I would love that. But okay. Tell the audience how they can find you, how they can get a hold of you, and what do you have coming up next?
Okay, well, so you just go to the website, kennedysandking.com. We have an email thing there if you want to get in contact with me. And the book, like I said, you can get on Amazon. And I'll be doing a few of these radio spots, in the next couple of weeks through my publisher. But I'm also a regular guest on something called Black Op Radio out of Vancouver about every other week. If you want to listen to me there.
And what night is that on? What night is that on?
Thursday night.
Okay, I've heard the name. I probably listened to it. Just written down the name. James DiEugenio, thank you so much. We talked about JFK assassinations, the evidence today, and we also talked about the Martin Luther King assassination. You ever got anything you want to promote? Give me a call. Put you right on the air.
Sure. My pleasure.
Thank you so much. The Opperman Report is brought to you by SubhashTechnosis.com. Subash Technosis is a search engine optimization and website design company located in India. So you know you're going to save a lot of money and get top quality service to boot. They offer all kinds of services, business process outsourcing, data entry, banking BPO services, recruitment process outsourcing, software testing, offshore research networking, customer care, press release content writing and distribution, and much, much more. They offer website development, e-commerce solutions, mobile responsive designs. Now, I've personally worked with Subhash for over 10 years. This is the man that puts out my press releases. They've done work on my websites, so I can personally recommend SubhashTechnosis.com. You can find the link to Subhash Technosis at OppermanReport.com and also AwakeRadio.us.
We all have questions. Did he do it or did he not? We all have opinions, but do we really know the truth? New evidence will now be presented and the ultimate answers will be revealed in the explosive documentary, Serpents Rising. Inspired by the bestseller Double Cross for Blood, an independent investigation of the trial of the century, the lies, the myths, and the concealed evidence. Don't miss Serpents Rising.
This excellent documentary film is available at Serpents Rising at Vimeo Videos on demand. Watch it for $1.99.
Hi folks, Ronnie here from Life Change Tea. There's a lot of hubbub about the ramifications of GMOs. First of all, what are GMOs? Genetically modified organisms. Yee! Man-made organisms entering our body, changing and damaging us from the inside out. What's our defense? First of all, not eating them. Second, cleansing from them when we do eat them. Thank God for Life Change Tea at getthetea.com. Life Change Tea cleanses from toxins, heavy metals, and helps flush GMOs out of your body. Our unique blend of herbs help cleanse you from the inside out, helping you feel refreshed and clean of yee. We also carry unique one-of-a-kind supplements. So order online at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Rid yourself of the yee that contaminates your food and water. Go to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. Get the tea, your best defense.
You can have your ad played here at OppermanReport.com every Friday night, 5 p.m., and Saturday night, 5 p.m. to 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. And on Friday nights, too, we do a live portion for 1 hour that I just do a live monologue. The ads are very, very inexpensive, and they're also played in the Opperman Report member section. In the member section, you can find all kinds of exclusive content that you won't find anywhere else. It's as cheap as $6 a month, $20 a quarter, or $75 for a year. If you contact me directly at oppermanreport@gmail.com, I'll set you up with a little special deal there where you get a discount if you PayPal me directly, and you even get a copy of my book. I want to thank William Ramsey, who helps us produce the show and book guests. You can find William Ramsey, who's an excellent author, at William Ramsey Investigates on YouTube.
WPR Rebuttal, covering the sides of the story missed by Wisconsin Public Radio, bringing narratives the UW System Board of Regents won't allow, shedding light on perspectives the owners of WPR don't want you to hear. Every Thursday at 12:30 Central Time, WPR Rebuttal is your destination for grassroots journalism in Sauk County and beyond. Our host, Senator JPO, provides insightful analysis into stories that are only superficially covered by mainstream press. A recent inventory of topics includes college graduate underemployment, yellow journalism in the media, and favoritism in the public sector hiring process. Get your WPR Rebuttal fix Thursdays at 12:30 Central Time.
Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, Private Investigator Ed Opperman. Just finished with James DiEugenio, talking about his book, JFK Assassination, The Evidence Today, that's forward written by Oliver Stone. And talked about the MLK, Martin Luther King assassination. I got to have him back. We got to give him back for a full 2 hours at least, because there's so much with the Martin Luther King assassination. First of all, Judge Joe Brown was the judge in that civil suit that the King family sued, and it was ruled that it was a conspiracy. Judge Joe Brown from the TV show. Judge Joe, that guy. Okay. And also, too, the whole thing surrounding James Earl Ray's escape from prison. I'm always suspicious about prison escapes, especially by high-profile people and stuff like that, because it's not that easy to escape from prison. You got to have help. You have to have help on the outside. You have to have help on the inside. It doesn't just happen. Okay. And he had a very well constructed ladder made out of plumbing pipe. That escape was, there's a lot more to it, and needs to be examined. We need a thorough examination of that escape. And also to his brother, a lot of people don't talk about this. His brother was head of the KKK, James Earl Ray, and that's pretty much glossed over too in most recountings of the Martin Luther King assassination. So big thanks to James DiEugenio, KennedysandKing.com. We'll get him to come back, and I'm going to interview his friend there. I think it was Lisa Pierce, about the Robert F. Kennedy assassination, because I'm always into that one too as well. There's a lot of good stuff there. What's that one there? Lie Too Big to Fail. Lisa Peace. The real history of the assassination of Robert F. Kennedy. We'll get into that when we have our guests come back and visit us again. If you enjoyed today's show, be sure and check out OppermanReport.com. That's where we have our members section, where we have exclusive content, exclusive shows that you won't hear live on the radio. You won't hear them on iHeart or iTunes or Spreaker or YouTube. A lot of people say, hey, Ed, what do we got to join the members section? You know, all your shows are on YouTube. These shows are not on YouTube. These are extra shows that are only in the members section. OppermanReport.com. If you want a discount, email me, OppermanReport@gmail.com. That's what it is. And I'll give you a discount. 13 months for $60, and that's what keeps the show on the air. That's what keeps the show live and running on the air. If you want to advertise here, you can contact me at that same email address. We're on Twitter, Opperman Report on Twitter. You can find us on Facebook. Follow us there. And, send your comments and your suggestions and your guest suggestions. We always appreciate that. When you do send a guest suggestion, also send their contact information. That's always a big help. A lot of people just like to say, hey, Ed, get Michael Avenatti on your show. Okay, fine. So, what's his email address? Give me some info there. I'd love to get him on the show. I'd love to wring his neck right now, as a matter of fact. Okay, coming home.